Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Ron, broadcasting to you live from the Extreme Studios just west of Orlando, Florida, here in the Pine Hills Palace. I also have the young 20-something Professor Pixel, also from the Central Florida area, next to that big old mouse that's having a lot of issues there. And Pixel, I have to say, one of the issues that Disney's having is one that we're going to be talking about tonight in Wayward Pines Season 1, Episode 9, the next to last episode, and that is, how the hell do you control everybody in your own little supposed private town? Because I tell you, this whole season 1 of Wayward Pines, I thought started off great. It's got that prisoner vibe and a more current show that people compare, I think, this to a little bit as From, which I've not seen. And it's just kind of changed a little bit from David Pilcher being this guy that has this sort of God complex, but in a nice jovial way because he's a little dude, little pipsqueak with glasses and balding hair, really offensiveless, right? And now he's just a jerk off, and we have the whole quote unquote terrorist subplot of the guys wanting to bomb their way out, and they don't know that the Abbeys are outside. And it's, the whole sexual re-education of the first generation of kids coming up, I thought could have been a stronger angle, but they chose not to dip into anything insidious or long term. They just went for the cheap, quick thrills here with bomb plots and keeping the family members apart, even though we kind of like them all here. And I don't know, this episode was a little flat to me. It was not really surprising at all, I guess. And, it's even made more so by the fact that we get a few people that we don't even really care about as far as the first generation kids going through and executing some of these so-called terrorists and all that, because, they're the ones that are going to be making Wayward Pines run in the future. And this just felt like a reach, like they're just trying to tidy up loose ends to finish up episodes 9 and 10. In other words, I've been disappointed slightly in the trajectory I think it's been going, and I feel like it's still getting there. What's your initial take?
So I expected, we all saw the end of the last episode where, truck crashes through the gate. And of course, the guy and the dead body get eaten by Abbeys, and that's fine. But we expected the Abbeys to invade. However, the sheriff manages to get to the gate before long, and he's taking those suckers out. Like that was a cool sequence. Him just shooting.
I agree with you. I liked it too. Yeah.
But how fast they were able to close it up and get to work on it, I was surprised. I really thought this was going to be war in the streets now. However,
war in the streets. There's going to be a reckoning.
Yeah, and the whole opening is, "You really want this?" with him holding Kate and a knife, which was obviously a fake out. Yeah. So I am very mixed. I was surprised at first that we didn't go straight to blood in the streets and stuff. But throughout all of this, we just watch as Toby Jones goes from when we reached the midpoint and he explained everything. Well, this is why we do things this way. This is why. Oh, we had a talent A and it totally got destroyed, so we had to lie this time. And this one, they really just wanted to remind you, hey, we decided that this is the bad guy.
Well, yeah, because it was almost convincing, wasn't it? That the guy, he almost seemed like, no, we're really trying to do the right thing here. But it was almost interesting that he was a guy that had like I say, the technology, the capability of doing it. But that doesn't mean you're going to be good at what you're at the environment, the culture that you're trying to create. You may recognize the need for it, but usually the person that has a great idea is not really good at executing it. You know what I'm saying? So that was almost an interesting angle. But I agree with you totally when you say that. It does seem like, they just let it go.
Yeah, because they did not need this episode for what's going to happen here at the end. Because I don't even really feel like there's a need. We're introduced to some punks of the first generation that decide, we're going to kill if we want to. We're going to handle it if the sheriff won't. Yeah. Okay. The best part of that is the silent screaming that we get from the sheriff's assistant, and
no Lucy.
Yeah, and I can't remember the name, Kate. But yeah, because they go that lot that was shown to us in the earlier part of the season, the nurse, the Pilcher's sister,
Hmm.
basically says, "Well, you've been told the truth. Well, that's smart that you're not sure, that you want to know for yourself." Pretty much gets her on her trip to lot 32 or 13 or whatever it's called.
Right.
And she goes down there, finds an old computer room, and in it, there's a computer with logs. That agent from the first couple episodes that was in on it sent Ethan to get captured. Well, he was apparently one of the survivors too. He was with him, but he was a part of a group that once they first thawed, he went out to see what remained, and guess what? It's nothing but Abby's. So it's just the same information that we already knew, and now they all know it. But what do they do with it? They decide we'll show everybody in town and call a fake reckoning.
Yeah.
And then we'll convince each other that this is the future now, and we'll all turn against David Pilcher. Why?
I mean, I get it.
I get it too. That
But
doesn't make it good.
yeah, it's not.
It's
So,
not. Instead of characters that we've talked about, how they've been really intelligent in how they're acting here. Oh, they're handling relationships very well. They turned David Pilcher into this man-child, and there will be people that will say, "Oh, he's always been that way." You could say that to Elements, yeah, but not to the point where he decides at the end of this episode to shut off the electricity in every sector, and he's going one at a time, and then finally the gates, and the Abbeys are outside, and they notice, hey, we can touch that. He is slaughtering these people to start again. Oh, whoop-de-doo.
yeah. I want to go back and talk about those the first kids of the academy or whatever like that, the graduating class, the people that show up there looking for Ethan because they want a reckoning, and they're threatening Arlene, the secretary, because as we saw, she kind of came in for the other one, and I thought that would have been a nice time if she's going to be a character to make her different than the last one. Who kind of knows how things are going. We saw her and Kate have a brief talk outside, which I thought was interesting. And one of the interesting things about the show I'll get into is some of the side characters who could have developed and didn't. But with Arlene, I couldn't really tell if she liked Ethan or not, or is just sort of there. So when these punks come in and they start blah, 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 first of all, they're punks, so we don't like them. Two, we know that there's all the sexual brainwashing, as I like to call it there, because they're kind of leaning into that, or they presented it slightly and didn't really do anything with it, being cowards that they are on TV. Even Amy, who was basically trying to seduce Ben and all that, she's having issues and stuff too. So it's really about all of these guys having to deal with the trauma of the women in their life that are having problems with it. But we see nothing with the problems Arlene's had. She's just sort of there. Like, say, she's no Lucy from Twin Peaks with certain quirks or things that you understand about her, might like, or just understand it. So it'd been nice if they had a quick little human connection between her and Ethan the few times they were together, whether it was she brings him a donut that he doesn't like, or makes the coffee bad, or just something stupid but human. So when these punks come in, we kind of rally around her a little bit, and it makes the guys look even worse because they interrupted or destroy it or do something, rather than just come up and throw a hissy fit. Because like any adult, she's like, yeah, get out of here, punks. And they kind of do say, like, okay, you're a wimp, you're a wuss ass. So when they show up later to handcuff her, and then they get the guns and shoot everybody, it's like, well, why didn't you just whack her too? Then you at least should have gotten some points for being sinister. They really wimped out on here, and it's a shame, because the strength of the show should not have been like it's like in The Walking Dead. It shouldn't really necessarily be the zombies themselves or the threat of the zombies. It's about the interactions of people. And here, when you put characters like this in here that you don't really know too much and don't see often, you're like, yeah, whatever. And when Ben got to the school a few episodes back, and they introduce him as being, one of the secret people that could kind of lead them. We even get a scene in here where he walks out and he has to apologize to all these people who are like that, and they're doing this hand clap thing that looks like, I don't know if they're shooting drugs or rock paper scissors. It's just stupid, and they're all rallying in front of him, wanting him to lead because he's their dad. I'm like, well, we know that's not Ben's nature, right? So he just wants to get a little tail, and he wants the girl to lead. Okay, maybe he's a little passive. He's a virgin. That's fine. And he actually seems to kind of like his dad, and he kind of doesn't believe MILF crackhead who's the lead psychologist there, the blonde, and even she's like, "Oh, you're a leader now. You can do great things." It's like all you fucking adults that have these really messed up lives, whether it's Pilcher or his sister or the headmistress or all these other ones, you guys did the shittiest job possible of picking adult people that could functionally lead a town. That's one of the biggest logistical issues I've had with it, because I don't recall seeing one person that could work a mill, a lathe, and knows how to repair cars. Nothing with it. We get the Asian barista early on that I thought might have been a character because she talks a few times. I thought, okay, maybe they'll develop her later on. And then, like I'd mentioned before, the earlier secretary that was worked in there with the sheriff's department is kind of like gone. And it's like, okay, I'm supposed to care about the family most of all if you don't want to introduce or slowly bring in or replace other characters. Fine, I get it. It was a nice shock when we had the first reckoning. That was kind of cool. But you're right, it's not good. And the one little bit of suspense we have in here is when she goes to the is when the nurse pulls her off to the side out of view of the cameras and like kind of like grabs her hand and is like, I hope you seek the truth that you find. And it's like, wow, what a great acting job. Her character's really got the most depth to it. And she gives her the key, the secret key, and you're like, okay, this is cool, right? And she goes in there, follows her way down. We forget that she was an FBI agent herself, or at least in training until they got married. But can we still trust Pam? I don't know. I guess so, but she sounds like she
Yeah.
doesn't trust her brother, which is Pilcher, and I think she's won over. And there was a time when I think I even mentioned a few streams ago that I wanted to see her and them, get into a little bit of a cat fight. But Teresa, I just kind of like her. I don't know why. It just seems to work, and it's a shame that now with nine episodes down, that we didn't get to see more of them as a functional family unit, say, surrounding, the wagons around and saying, okay, we're team Hunt, here, or whatever their last name is, and or Burke or whatever fuck, and just going, trying to figure out how to get out of town. But I just, well, it's true, because it's like, what was the point in her finding something? It's to basically sub season 2. Right? I mean, and she goes and, you're talking to Kate, and now we go, Kate's the one character that you go, as sexy as she is, or how much you understood her backstory with Ethan, which I thought they did okay. They kind of let her be stale for several episodes, and they put her basically in charge of all these wimpy guys that know what the hell they're doing. And I've told you this, and I'll say it again. The biggest problem with the show is it was not realistic at all with what people would be doing with their free time, whether it's sex, drugs, rock and roll, partying, the natural human instinct of congregating together in groups and doing things, forming clans of kinship based off of similarities, or sheer boredom, whether it's drugs or partying. More than one person would try to escape and all that too. It's very neuter to fit the story TV wise, and I did not like it, up to the point where we get ready to have the reckoning. I'm ranting here a little bit, so I want to kind of pause here a little bit and let you kind of fill it in, because you kind of went on a little bit too about most of the show, and the episode does go quick. I mean, I got to admit that, but nothing happens to me.
Yeah, no, because it didn't need to exist. This entire episode gets us to the point that we were at the end of the last episode. The only thing is the twist of who's behind it now, who's the bad guy. It's stupid. It really ticks me off, because you know that I have enjoyed the show. You have too, to an extent, not nearly as much as, say, Twin Peaks, but for what it was doing for at least the first half, we really liked it. But now we're getting to a point where it's hard. I feel how you felt 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you can feel it coming,
Yeah, and the only thing is that, like, the only thing to look forward to is the next episode is the finale, and I know that there's like a big oh no, what in that, but we'll have to watch that. We'll have to talk about that. But that's not this episode. This episode was unnecessary. They just truly wanted to make Toby Jones the villain. And in case people were doubting that, because before you couldn't really say that, okay, well, obviously he's done some messed up stuff, but he did save the human race. He did do this. He's still trying to keep his town together, and he's doing it based off of behavioral patterns that he has run before. So you can say, yeah, he is a control freak, and that's all right. But still, to the extent where they make him have his tantrum, that's what they wanted to do.
You're right.
They wanted to turn him into a petulant man-child.
Yep. And that's sad because, again, is he supposed to be the villain? Is it supposed to be, well, we understand different perspectives in the show, and that's what makes the good quality writing want to root for the family unit, because only together as a family could they possibly survive this and help each other out, which, healthy dose of paranoia and something like that, I think would have been much more palatable to the viewer. Or if you went with more adult themes, like when we talk about Ben, he's obviously a good kid from a good family. It'd have been great if we saw the blonde psychologist, their name escapes me off the top of my head, but it's, how do I say it? And this sounds kind of weird, but it would have been interesting to see her play the sex pot, but not overly seduce him, kind of let him seduce her in a way and kind of win him over that way, which is, classical psychological conditioning, rather than just pumping up as like, no, I really do care for you, and I really do think people look up to you, and all that other kind of, mommy bullshit, because he gets along fine with his mom. It doesn't make sense. If he were a single dad and had him, it could have been even more intriguing. But I just, I don't know. I your point about Pilcher being a man-child and petulant and all that, I think spot on, because like I say, they could have taken an interesting angle with him. That would have helped. They could have taken an interesting angle with the boy's virginity and what it's like to have your views turned against you in family because you're finally getting some from, somebody else. And now you're literally and allegorically becoming a man and making your own decisions and stuff. They could have done something there. I really don't care if this one season is unique in its own and they're trying to do something totally different. Just keep the anthology alive for season 2, which of course I know that that's what they do, and I have no problem with that. But even like I say, Kate, her story seems not conclusive, and we don't really care about her quote unquote husband here in this town. We don't hate the guy. He doesn't seem like a bad dude. I don't think he really cares that she gets back with Ethan, so we saw no jealousy from him, which I thought was a little odd too. And it's just, the worst part of it though is not the Abbeys early on that we see that aren't really terrifying, although I'd like to give them a +1 for practical effects, but they just don't look good. But Pilcher cutting the power, that is such weak sauce. I mean, it really takes what little air is left in the balloon here and lets it all out. It's like, oh really, you're just gonna do that and think you'll be safe when they come in? And I guess the whole idea of seeing that there was another town as well, perhaps, and this was a second one that was alluded to before, maybe there's some way that's the writer's escape mechanism for saying, well, no, we get Pilcher out of this or however we want to because we'll just do this. And it's like, I just don't know. And honestly, at this point, I kind of don't care who lives or dies. It would have been even more interesting if for a few episodes in, when we saw Ethan first try to get out himself and we see the snipers and the towers, that whole mystery of what's on the outside and is it there, and just tickling that a little bit with maybe them catching a radio frequency from somebody on outside would kind of just keep another angle to it. And here they do the classic television bit of, well, we got all these things going on, nothing's really working, so we'll kill off a lot of the conspirators in a jail cell to make these people look bad. And it's trying to get down to one or two things by literally killing people off, whether you care about them enough, just to say you did it. It's supposed to be shocking, and it does not work. And even now with Pilcher cutting the power and everything going dark, and we see the Abbey, we know that that's what's going to happen in the next episode, right? So blood in the streets, carnage everywhere, no real emotional plot for us to follow in terms of the family that's clearly fine. Like, oh my God, we want to see them all together. Do we care if Kate lives or dies? We kind of like Ethan because he's the one that makes things happen. The son's okay, but he's kind of, did he really call his dad out today? I don't know. It's very wimpy at this point here. It's not finishing strong, which I'm a little bit disappointed in. Final thoughts, sir.
Yeah, no.
Give it to me.
I think that it could have been easy fixes to keep the show going. I mean, I was fine with the past few episodes. I was fine with how they were doing it. But this was just the step too far. The episode too many. They want blood in the streets for just
What's the
pathetic
purpose?
reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. It's a little bit of that because it's we're really the monsters all along. Okay, yeah, that's fine. This whole thing could have been solved if they had taken the people that wanted to leave the town, the terrorists, and just pushed them out the gate. Okay, have fun. Bye.
Well, and here's the thing. You bring up an interesting point with that because, yeah, I'd mentioned before that when we covered The Prisoner and all their episodes, about half of them, aren't really on par with the original 6 or 7 that are fantastic, and it's quite it's quite obvious, I think. But a lot of the themes on the good episodes that dealt with individuality and freedom and the human condition, as it were, and it was a show that prided itself on being intelligent, not using guns and all that, using your brain, the power of free will, and all that. It made for some really sharp exchanges between people that maybe you don't know if you could trust or not, especially women. And I say that only because in here, the women are the ones that really are kind of trustworthy. They're the ones that kind of nurture all these little
Except for the
areas
fangirl.
in a town. But what if they did what you said? If they had some people that said, yeah, well, we had a group of people that don't want to be a part of the town, so they leave. Kind of like the modern day version of Silo, which also to me has a little bit of vibes from it. The Rebecca Ferguson show, where if you say you want to leave, you got to leave. We started to review that here on Xtreme TV, and kind of fizzled out a few episodes in because of the course they were going. And it's like, my God, you got a nice premise. You don't need to be cute about it, just execute it. And a lot of these shows are starting to fail about midstream or in the last act. And I just guess it's for, the ease and sake of making viewers not be challenged by something different. Because at the end, having the Abbeys come to destroy the town, if Lenny's going to get shot or killed or whatever at the end of Mice and Men, a lot of people out there might go, well, that's sad and that's horrible and he didn't deserve it. But when you look at it, you go, well, he kind of had it coming. And I'll just leave that for you literary freaks out there understand what I'm saying. But it's like Twin Peaks. Once they mentioned who the killer was and all that, it was completely gone. The intriguing thing about Twin Peaks was the moodiness about it and all the second and third layers of the characters and what they were into and the connections that we wouldn't see for episodes later, the history that the town had. That's Americana nutshell, and we would always talk about how Stephen King captured that well in his books and a little bit maybe in some shows, hit or miss. And that's what this show here, Wayward Pines, started to do, but got away from it. Now it's just any other TV show at the end. I know I did ask for your final thoughts, but because I added on to what you said, which I thought was a really interesting idea, that could have made us care about some of these people on the outside and present some different viewpoints, as well as gave us a look on the Abbeys and made things a little bit more meatier and dicier. But if they are ending this storyline by the next episode, I guess that's where it's leading to, because it's very weak right now. There's no outstanding things that we go, man, I want to see this in season 2. And in a way that makes me not want to watch it. And I think that's one of the reasons why with this, even though it got renewed for season 2 fairly quick, if I recall correctly, it definitely seems to fizzle out here because of that. Now, based on what I said with your reply, what final thoughts do you have?
From what I remember, season 2 is still worth it. But that's because of something that we'll discuss at the end of next week. Overall, just a sad episode. Not a good sad, just a oh wow, okay.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 1, episode 9, Wayward Pines. Still a very good show, and I gotta say, I still like the opening. It's kind of creepy. I really like it a lot, even though it's kind of weird. It's not totally in your face like, say, Black Sails or something, but this is it's still a good show. It's still definitely watchable, and you really do want to watch it because what you have invested in it hasn't completely left me, despite our ranting in this episode, mine mostly. We like different things, obviously, Professor Pixel, and I would say with your young age, you tolerate crap a lot better than I'm willing to at my 80s age. That's 1980s for you freaks out there, and makes for interesting discussions, especially when we talk about something that either I've never seen before or you've never seen before, or we both have never seen before. So I'm glad we're having a chance to do that here with everybody that are fans of the Xtreme Movie Show. I'd like to thank everybody for watching, listening. Let us know if there's any TV shows in the future you'd like us to kind of consider covering too, because we'll be making that decision shortly, within a few weeks. Professor Pixel and I will be, of course, discussing and dissecting that here on Sunday nights. For Professor Pixel, I'm your host, Rob. Thanks for watching. Listen, have a good night, and as always, stay extreme.
This was not a Dan Curtis production.
nor a Quinn Martin in color production.